Alright there, geezers, Jules here from FGS, home of the Future Game Show. And you know what video gamers love more than anything else? Video game monsters. I know, surprising, right? But you know what? I'm not talking about the energy drink. I'm not talking about the government. I'm not even talking about your mate Sean after a few pints of shandy. I'm talking about the xenomorphs, the pyramid heads, and the obvious burnt face man known as the Nemesis. As these are the monstrosities that we will willingly invite into our beds in order to keep us up all night in the worst possible ways. However, one question usually arises whilst looking at these monstrous visages, and that is usually, ew? But when scientifically broken down, what that statement really means is what type of primal horror are these monsters trying to invoke within us? Well, fret not, my friends, because that is exactly what I, Jules Gill, and my beautiful assistant Josh Lloyd are here to explore. And Josh, in case you didn't already know, is FGS's resident horror buff and even hosts a horror-themed show every bloody Tuesday. But enough plugging, let's get slugging, as I'm Jules.
And I'm Josh.
And these are the terrifying truths behind video game monsters. And you know the drill by now. I've, of course, selected a fair few deep cuts so you won't know all of the entries that are going to appear here.
Number 8, the worm, the forest. I'm going to start with the first thing I think of when it comes to enemy designs that freak me out. The forest and its sequel are well known for their horrifying mutant creatures. But one thing that brings a chill to players more than any other, the worm. As freaky as the masked mutants and Virginia are, the worm is on another level. In the endgame, you can find a number of dead grey specimens found alongside mutant babies like the ones found in the medical hallways leading up to the artifact room. The bed of the worm bears the name John, but the significance of this name is unknown. From then on, if you defeat a boss monster above land, it has the chance to spawn a worm mutant. And if you leave that thing alive, it can multiply and coalesce into its final form, or should I say, forms. What at first seems like a wriggling torso-like creature can come back to haunt you as an amalgam that takes several forms. The first form is the many. These individual worms can swarm players and impede player vision and movement, letting other worms form a larger creature that can land devastating blows and can topple trees and decimate built structures. Upon hitting the ground, it explodes in all directions, making it near impossible for most players to fight. It can form a three-legged being that can swipe at you and is a real bitch to dodge.
Worst of all, though, if there's a lot of player structures around, they can form a giant flying creature that body slams an area, instantly killing any player under it and destroying almost any structure. If you try to run, it splits into many beings like a tidal wave of flesh faster than any player can move. The worst part of all, other than when they're attacking, the worm is nearly completely silent. Be sure not to underestimate that first wriggling corpse known as John.
Number 7, Finger Creepers, Elden Ring. Now let's be honest, there are a lot of things lurking in the shadows of pretty much every From Software title that are bound to keep you up at night, and it definitely seems that the design team is comprised solely of Disney Imagineers on a festival come down, such is their skill at making monsters that will leave you reaching for the bleach to scrub your brain with. Yet for me personally, as a man who will hit supersonic bat shrieking levels whenever a money spider lands on him, it is the Finger Creepers from Elden Ring that sends a shiver right into my lizardy brain. I mean, just look at these things, or don't, as I try to do for pretty much all of my Elden Ring runs, because I hate them. They terrify me. Get away from me with those warty fingers, ooh! Well, much like watching your cat be sick and doing nothing about it, sometimes all you can do is stare into the void and wonder what the hell is going on. And, as pointed out by Square Table Gaming in their video exploring the Finger Creepers in depth, it turns out that these disgusting creatures might actually carry an even more disturbing origin. You see, Square Table Gaming posits that the Finger Creepers may in fact be the servants of the Lord of Blasphemy himself, Rickard, as their location in the game would reflect areas which this god-devouring serpent may have wished to consolidate power. The rings on their fingers seem to agree with this theory, especially when you look at Rickard's own hand. Yet before you write these off as simply discarded digits in desperate need of a manicure, it turns out that they might not have actually come from Rickard himself, and in fact may have been the process of his blasphemous magic and grafting of fire giant hands. This would not only explain the giant size of the hands in the first place, but also why the fire giants found frozen at Flame Peak have all had their hands cut off at the wrist. What we can therefore take from this is that Rickard probably used his allegiance between the royal family and the trolls and giants alongside grafting and his blasphemous magic in order to create his twisted minions, which were then sent out to protect his interests, their appearances acting as a mockery to past loyalties and possibly to the fingers themselves. So there you have it, a reason behind these absolutely terrifying creatures. Does that make them any less scary? No, not in the slightest. And I'd like to move on, please.
Number 6. The Procies from Soma. Anyone who's played Soma knows that the real horror is the nature of existence and sentience in a transhuman world. I know the ending of the game will stick with me for a long time. In fact, the writing in Soma can make some of the enemies seem lame by comparison, until you find out more about them anyway. These Procies shamble around, often lacking one or more of their 5 senses, and being highly aggressive. One that particularly stands out is Terry Ackers, ex-chief factor at Site Delta. Ackers was the oldest person on Pathos, and as the threat of the WAU grew, the company decided to move Delta's site crew to Site Theta. After finding out he would not keep his rank, Ackers stayed behind. Months later, they got a call from him saying he changed his mind and wanted to relocate. When the team arrived to get him, Ackers ambushed them, overpowering the entire team and taking their ship. This was not the same man they knew. He was alone for months in the halls of the underwater city and tried to keep... And to try and keep his mind and body intact, he began ingesting a lot of structure gel, which kept him reconstituting for a long time, before crashing down into the depths of madness. In one intense psychotic episode, Ackers heard a voice telling him that he did not need his eyes to see. This voice, coupled with the gel-induced light sensitivity, convinced him to remove his own eyes. Theta's crew found him motionless in the ship he stole and took him to the medical ward. The on-site doctor took several scans of him and wrote a report up, declaring that the mutation caused by the insane amount of structure gel in his body was too extreme, and whilst he was still alive, he would likely never awaken. Just then, he of course wakes up. He bashes her skull in and teams up with the other Procies in Theta, completely overwhelming the human team. By the time you reach Site Theta in the game, you find the doctor he attacked, still kept alive by the structure gel in her system. You also have to sneak around Ackers. He's blind but has impeccable hearing, able to even hear you turn your light on and off. His appearance tells us a lot of things we may not already know about him. He has rogue limbs growing out of his torso, and he appears split in half. Perhaps he's in the process of reproducing asexually. Turns out I'm ace as fuck. Or maybe he did more than just take his eyes out when he was alone down there.
Number 5. Scapegoat, Koudelka. Now in the discussion of cult classic horror games, I do feel like Koudelka for the PlayStation 1 usually gets left out of the conversation, which I think is unfair, because although the graphics are definitely sharp enough that you could actually cut beef on them, because them polygons, baby, they are there. There's a decent story, amazing characters, and some pretty interesting boss and enemy designs. And the central theme of the enemies in this game is that of the corruption of the body, mind, and spirit, where thanks to warping energies and dark arts, twisted manifestations can be encountered on the regular. And of all of these, none is more disturbing than the Scapegoat, which acts as an early boss battle. The design of this strange alien parasite connected to a mass of writhing limbs is notoriously grotesque, but things get even darker when you dig into the enemy's description that is found within the in-game bestiary. Now, the game defines the Scapegoat as the anger and betrayal of fallen women given form, with fallen women referencing a Victorian term for women who had lost their virginity outside of wedlock. However, the precise use of the words anger and betrayal speak to an incredibly bleak situation in which the women were sexually abused or manipulated. Now, going back to the design of the creature, you can see that the parasite is pushing so hard down onto the limbs that it can't even stand, yet is is using their body in order to transport it across towards the party that you're playing as. It is really disturbing once you think about it. And this, plus the name Scapegoat, which references a shifting of blame onto another party, really drives home the story here, that this is the tale of women being abused and then abandoned by society for their perceived promiscuousness. Grim.
Number 4, Broken Neck Lady, Fatal Frame 2. Now, Fatal Frame 3 is my favorite in the series, but seeing these horrors through the eyes of children adds another layer to the terror. The Broken Neck Lady particularly stands out as a freaky ghost. She's the only ghost to tip players off to her presence by doing things like turning on a projector or affecting lights. She's actually the second broken-necked woman enemy in the series, following one in the first game who took her own life, preferring that over being murdered. Broken Neck from the first game may look freaky, but there's something especially uncanny about the one in the second entry. It's not made clear how she ended up with her neck like that, but if you piece together enough clues scattered around the game, it turns out that upon seeing the darkness spreading across the village, she put on her kimono, right over left, a way typically only done for the dead, and headed out to the river. She took her own life, jumping off the edge of a bridge. She landed on her side, her head snapping off to the side. An interesting note is that in real-life cases like this one, the victim often doesn't die straight away.
Number 3, The Beast of Nurgle, Warhammer 40k, Darktide. Now, as you probably know well by now, thanks to my countless musings and the fact that my hobby table over there is always in a constant state of disarray, I am a huge Warhammer fan. In fact, the relationship that I have with Games Workshop is kind of like a cheeky little game that we play called I Drink Your Milkshake, except the milkshake is my hard-earned pennies. Love 'em though. Therefore, through years of overexposure to the medium, I've become pretty well versed on all the horrors that dwell within the warp, and I feel that it is time to share this knowledge with those not all that familiar with one particular monstrosity that's found within the rusting halls of Warhammer 40k, Darktide. Now, the Beast of Nurgle in this game is a truly terrifying spectacle, a mass of muscle, flailing tentacles, and way more mouths than should be allowed on a single organism. Plus, I'm just going to say it right now, I bet it fucking stinks, because this is literally the lapdog of the god of disease and corruption known as Nurgle, and he is stanky boy. Does not wipe. Yet here's a funny bit of trivia that may twist your perspective on any future maulings by the Beast of Nurgle, and that is that this creature, this horrifying foe right here, thinks that it's playing with you and sees you as a friend. Yeah, you heard me right. The Beast of Nurgle sees you as a friend and just wants to play with you. It's basically like a giant puppy, but unfortunately it's unaware of its own crushing strength that turns you into body jam, and also its cries of pleasure unfortunately just don't sound that attractive to our human ears. What it's meant to be is like, oh, please play with me, I'm so very lonely and just want a friend, comes out as so you just have to think of this as a giant puppy unable to control its excitement. So the next time that you see the Beast of Nurgle in Warhammer 40k Darktide, don't get your guns out straight away, just cover a Kong in peanut butter and throw it down the hallway. I mean, chances are it won't work because that's not in the game, but still, at least you tried. And now unfortunately you gotta put it down old Yeller style.
Look at the flowers, Lizzie.
Oof.
Number 2, I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream, Scorn. When playing 2022 Scorn, I was impressed by how it captures the feeling of using alien machines you can't know the true function of in an alien place where everything and everyone is beyond your understanding like nothing else. In Chapter 4, though, you have to defeat a particular creature that's not only reminiscent of a particular Bakinski painting, but of the ending of a short story I've always wanted to adapt to film, but have never had the budget to do. I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream. This short story also had its own game in 1995 that expanded out the characters and was partially written by the author of the original source material. This is an underrated game from this time period in my opinion, but that's of no matter because look at this thing. In the future, the world's superpowers create gigantic supercomputers to wage a global war too complex for human minds to comprehend. One day, the US supercomputer redefines itself as AM, Allied Master Computer, and of course, a reference to cogito ergo sum. Over the course of this war, AM has developed an intense hatred for all humanity. It uses its immense power to completely eradicate the population of the world. It keeps 5 people alive in order to bring them underground and torture them. AM has ways of expanding their lifespans indefinitely, as well as altering their bodies and minds however it wants. Over 100 years later, after torture and humiliation, the likes of which we can never understand, the humans are forced to endure illusions of each other being murdered and disemboweled. It tricks them into long journeys where it taunts them the whole way and blinds one of their members when they try to escape. The group reaches the end of their journey, where they find a multitude of canned foods, food they haven't tasted in a century. They anguish, however, at their inability to open the cans. This drives one of them insane, and he tries to eat his comrade. In a moment of clarity, the man being eaten realizes that the only way to escape AM's torture is through death. He kills his attacker and all of the other humans, but AM stops him before he can kill himself. The machine is enraged. It cannot resurrect the humans, and focuses all of its rage at the human race on the final human. My words can't do it justice, so I'm just going to read out the excerpt of what happens next over 100 years later. I am a great soft jelly thing, smoothly rounded, with no mouth, with pulsing white holes filled with fog where my eyes used to be. Rubbery appendages that were once my arms, bulks rounding down into legless humps of soft, slippery matter. I leave a moist trail when I move. Blotches of diseased, evil grey come and go on my surface, as though light is being beamed from within. Outwardly, dumbly, I shamble about. A thing that could never have been known as human. A thing whose shape is so alien a travesty that humanity becomes more obscene for the vague resemblance. AM has won. Simply, he has taken his revenge. I have no mouth, and I must scream.
And number 1, the Suppressors, the suffering ties that bind. Now, to say that things get a little bleak across the suffering games is kind of like saying that the internet got a little bit thirsty for #giant vampire lady when Resident Evil Village was released. Here you will meet the worst of humanity and go even further as you explore manifestations of capital punishment, anguish and pain given corporeal form as enemies within the game. And while the first title focused on means of execution of varying levels of awfulness, it was the second game that pushed things into truly dark territory with the malefactors of Baltimore, as here they all represented the horrors witnessed by this area over the decades. Gorges represent the widespread famine during the Great Depression, trigger men are shown to be linked to criminal gangs that ruin neighborhoods, and the arsonists speak of those that perished in raging fires that spread through the city across history. Yet of all of them, none are more horrific than the Suppressors, which, while appearing to be a mass of guns and flesh, actually act as a manifestation of the area's ties with police brutality. Sporting police riot equipment and with a flashlight that is jammed right into its face, the Suppressor shoots every bullet it has the moment that it sees you, becoming the embodiment of shoot first, ask questions never. This is violence in excess, and the fact that it presents a horrifically distended stomach and lurches around in a painfully arduous manner informs us of police that quite literally couldn't be bothered to help and grew fat off the misery of others. It is a rather powerful expression indeed, albeit one that you won't be able to examine for very long because once the flashlight falls on you and it catches you in its gaze, well, unfortunately, it's going to shoot you to ribbons moments later. And there we go, my friends. Those were the terrifying truths behind video game monsters. I hope that you, to say enjoyed that is a bit of a weird statement, isn't it? Because it's not enjoyable content, but I hope that you enjoyed the video, or at least the premise of it. And if you'd like to see more of them, then let me know, because Josh and I have tons more creatures in the dark that we could bear for you in the future. So let us know down in the comment section below. And if you want to catch up with us on the social medias, you can follow me over on most social media sites, including X. So cool. RetroJ with a 0. Hope to see you over there. And you can follow Josh over here on his social medias. And of course, you can follow Tommy, the glorious editor, on his social medias here. What a ledge. But before I go, my friend, I just want to say one thing. Even though we explored terrifying truths that were dark and downright horrible sometimes, there is one golden truth that you should definitely carry with you going forward every day of your life. And that is that you, yes, you watching this video, are a massive ledge and you deserve the absolute best. You deserve love, you deserve happiness, you deserve success. We all do as human beings, and I hope that you're achieving your life goals. Be kind to yourself because you bloody well deserve it, all right? As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.